couple of teachable moments want to begin with this morning. I've had a couple of these this week, and it's always been good for me personally to just be on the outlook as I go and come different places during my days, during my weeks, encounter different folks, have different experiences, and you probably do this also. Just you try to be alert, to be in tune with the events and the people around you, because God can sometimes speak to us. I don't mean in any kind of supernatural way, but in answer to our prayers. He can speak to us. He can give us special insight. He can teach us things in just about any place we find ourselves, maybe just about around anybody we find ourselves around. Okay, we're always looking for these teachable moments, these moments in our lives when we can learn things we need to learn, when we can have these great truths reinforced. And as parents, of course, we're always needing to be doing that, right? You see things when you're with your children, see somebody acting good, might want to point that out, someone acting a little bit foolishly and why that's happening, and maybe point that out as a teachable moment. Well, let me go back in time with you just a little bit. When I was not quite a teenager, one of my grandfathers had a horrific stroke. I mean, this was a very debilitating stroke. It affected his body in some pretty significant ways, and you're familiar with strokes of that magnitude. But the worst feature of this particular stroke was that it affected his mind. It really hurt his ability to remember. It hurt his ability to formulate ideas. It hurt his ability to communicate with other people. And it was extremely frustrating for my grandfather, Jesse. Jesse, he was a legend in the town of Bruton. He was probably the best deer hunter that ever been in Bruton. He and my granny, they owned a restaurant there. I actually owned 2 restaurants, and that's back in the day when poor people could be business folks, and so they weren't wealthy people, but they were known, and my grandfather was not the godly man that I wish he would have been, but he was a force. He was a force, and now this stroke has reduced him to being so dependent on other people. And I remember as a child going with my grandmother, because there was no one else to go with her. It wasn't something I would necessarily volunteer to do, but there was no one to go with her to a family meeting, a group meeting with other families of stroke victims. And we went down to a hospital in Pensacola. If you were sick in Bruton, that's where you went, usually to Pensacola Hospital. We were down there, and I go in this room with lots and lots of families that are experiencing what my grandmother is experiencing, and our family is experiencing, and my grandfather is experiencing. And I remember the great pain that was in this room, the great hurt that was in this room, because these were people that had suffered tremendous loss. Either the person who had experienced a stroke had suffered great loss of physical, motor skills, loss of intellect, loss of ability to just to have any semblance of normalcy. And then their families, they lost grandpa, they lost dad, they lost grandma, they lost a wife. And there was, again, it was just a shadow over the room. And I remember thinking, being in that room, I remember it today just as well as if it had happened yesterday. I remember thinking in that room, how blessed we are, how blessed I am to be able to think, to be able to go to school, to be able to remember my name, to be able to know who the President of the United States is, to just be able to tie my shoes, to be able to do certain things that maybe before I went in that room and saw these folks and saw these families and the tears, maybe those were things that I was more inclined to take for granted. And I've noticed even now, right, in our prayers, and I do this also, we thank God for our physical health. We thank Him for our many blessings, as well we should. Scriptures remind us, the Apostle Paul, one of the most appreciative of all New Testament authors and apostles, says, "In everything give thanks, But it would seem to me that we would do well to also especially give thanks for our minds, for our brains. If you today are with us and you have the ability to recall your name, to know your birthday, to know the names of the people around you. And I know sometimes even the healthiest of us, we struggle to remember what we had for supper last night or, things like that. That's just a part of normal forgetfulness. But if you're here and you can find the book of Genesis in your Bible and you can read Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. If you today are able to sing these songs, if you are able today to remember what Jesus did and the purpose of this memorial feast, if you're able today to go to a restaurant and look at a menu and make decisions about what you're going to eat, let's be thankful. Let's be grateful for that. This past week, and this is one of these teachable moments, it was a reminder. I was in a particular place encountering some other folks who at one time, I'm convinced, and this is maybe no great compliment, but I'm convinced they were a lot more intelligent than I am. Their ability to recall important facts superseded my ability. I get that. I know that. But I was around more of these folks this week, and these are precious folks. These are wonderful people. They each have a story. Many of them built the fires we warm ourselves by even this morning. And now they struggle. They struggle at the simple things that come so easily for us. And I'm not saying this to discourage us at all or to put a shadow over our assembly. I'm saying this as a teachable moment for Jeff and for all of us. Be thankful for your mind. What's the commercial? A mind is a terrible thing to waste. Well, so is a day. A day is a terrible thing to waste. An opportunity to do good is a terrible thing. There are a lot of terrible things to waste. We understand that. Don't waste your mind. Don't waste your brain. The Bible talks a lot about our mind, about our intellect, and how we're to tend to it, how we're to care for it, how we're to protect it, how we're to nurture it. One of my favorite passages, and probably one of your favorites also, Philippians 4, verse 8, tells us to guard our mind, that whatever things are true and noble and good, if there be any virtue, if these things are praiseworthy, what are we to do with our mind? We're to think on these things. Let us think on these good things while we have the capacity to think on these good things. And let us thank God. Let's thank God for the ability to remember today our name, to remember our birthday, to remember who we are, to remember how to dress ourselves, to remember how to get to the church building and hopefully how to get back home and how to get back to the church building tonight. Listen, that's a simple thing. That's an easy thing for many of us. But with the aging process, simple things become complex things for some of us. Physically, mentally, intellectually, maybe even spiritually. Okay? So, can we thank God today? Can we thank God today for our minds? And one of the best ways we thank God for our minds, for our ability to do with these brains what we need to do, is to glorify Him with our minds. Let's keep our minds from thinking garbage thoughts. Let's keep our minds from being exposed to trash in our society. And let's be positive people. Let's use our minds to read the Bible, to learn the Bible, to love the Bible, to share the Bible with other people, because it will likely be true, and it may be true with me, that the day may come when you hand me a Bible and I don't know what it is anymore. That day may come. Today is not that day. It's not at 10 o'clock. It's not that day. We have the book. We have the mental capacity, the intellectual capacity. Read it, savor it, love it, share it with other folks. Let's be thankful for our minds. So, next time you're around somebody who's struggling, let's be compassionate. That's a tremendous loss, but let us also be thankful and let us be remotivated, re-energized to every day we get up and we know our name. That's a good day. That's a day to glorify God, and that's a day to use our intellect to be a blessing because we have been blessed. Another teachable moment that happened to me this week actually happened to me yesterday. I am typically in Ukraine during the Helen Keller Festival. This year is not the case. I'll be leaving for Ukraine tomorrow. Appreciate your prayers. But yesterday I was up walking around this road in front of our annex there, the main street of Tuscumbia. It was blocked off in a couple sections, and they had a lot of these amazing cars there. Some trucks, some motorcycles also, but it's the cars that especially drew my attention. They had 57 Chevys, 66 Mustangs. They had some amazing Corvettes, and they had some cars I didn't even know existed. And these are cars, obviously, that are 50 years old, some of them 75 years old, some of them much newer than that. But the idea of this particular car show was to show you what we used to have, to show you the grandeur and the beauty of these machines. And these machines, even though they're antiques, even though they're old, they had been restored. They had been made new. And I'm thinking that in many cases these cars were made better than new. They actually, when they were bought years ago, they weren't that nice. They certainly weren't that expensive. But they have been refurbished and repainted, and there's not a speck of dust on them, and it's just kind of nice, kind of good for me to reminisce. I spent a little time over in the section where the Mustangs were. When I was a child, my father bought a 1968 Mustang. I was probably about 14, 15 when he bought it. Bought it for about $600. That's a good deal. There wasn't anything wrong with this 68 Mustang. It was yellow, had a black top, and I noticed yesterday I was kind of drawn to those cars that were yellow and had black on them. They were just beautiful, right? So I'm looking at yesterday a 68 Mustang. I'm thinking about the 68 Mustang that my father had. Well, he died when I was 15, and so I got that 68 Mustang. And it was a fine machine. I had a problem. The engine blew out in it, and then I got it replaced with another much inferior engine. I guess at that time I was a senior in high school, and I made the most stupendous of mistakes. I wanted something shiny over something that was valuable, and with my mom's consent and financial support, I took my 68 Mustang that I inherited from my father, and I traded it in on a 1980 Chevy Monza. Did you hear what I said? Raise your hand if you have seen a 1980 Chevy Monza at a car show lately. Exactly. I'm walking Main Street yesterday. There are no 1980 Chevy Monzas. What a dumb. I regret that. One day, if I ever have a wife that allows me to be a little bit vain in my money and her money, one day before I step into eternity, I'd love to find a 68 Mustang for $600 again. Wouldn't that be? That'd be just a dream. The teachable moment for me, that's just the way my brain works. Okay, maybe your brain works this way also. Always searching for spiritual applications for things. I'm seeing these restored, refurbished vehicles. I'm thinking that each of them has a story to tell. Each of them, if these cars could talk, man, what? And it's kind of neat because the owners of these cars, a lot of them are older folks. They're sitting in their chairs, pulled up under some shade, and they're telling stories not from 2014, but from 1975 and 1947 and so on. It's good to hear those guys and those gals talk. But what I'm thinking about when I see those refurbished vehicles, I'm thinking about us. I'm thinking about me. I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking that as I look in this audience, and yes, it may be the case that we've got a 1980 Monza or two, a Gremlin or two. Now, no offense if you drove up in a Gremlin, okay? I don't mean that, but you get the point. But as I look around the room, I see 57 Chevys. I see 66 Mustangs. I see 65 Corvettes. I see people that, are you with me on this? I see people that have been refurbished. I see people that have been renewed, repainted, restored, given a second chance. Is this biblical? Of course it is. You remember the most famous of all the Psalms, the Psalm that we may very well read at your funeral and mine? You remember the third verse of the 23rd Psalm? This is written by Shepherd David. He said, speaking of the Lord, He restores my soul. He's not talking about automobiles. He's not talking about a fine piece of furniture that's been made new or better than new or as good as new. He's talking about his soul. He's talking about that eternal part of him. And so when I'm seeing all these vehicles, I'm seeing us. I'm seeing people. We've had some dents. We've had some scratches. We've blown some gaskets, right? We've had some flat tires. Maybe we've got some of that still today. But the good news is that just as those vehicles can be restored, better than new, more valuable than ever, that can happen with you. That can happen with me, right? So next time you go to one of these car shows, take a grandchild, take a child, have a teachable moment, have an opportunity of reflection, spiritually speaking. And let's thank God that we don't have the dents we used to have. We don't have the scratches. We don't have the rattle in the trunk, okay? We're better. We're cleansed. Read sometime Romans chapter 12, 1 and 2. Talks about how we can be renewed through the spirit of our mind. We can be transformed. We can go from clunker to Christian. We can go from something that is trashy to something that is terrific. And many of us are involved presently in that by the way, with those cars, it's an ongoing thing. Every day I'm sure those guys get up and they think, all right, what now do I need to do to make this vehicle run even better? I got up thinking that this morning about myself, didn't you? What can I do today to be a better preacher, to be a better husband, to be a better father, to be a better brother, to be a better friend? And then get about the business of doing it. It's an ongoing. We're always needing to be tinkering with ourselves, with God's help, getting better and better until He calls us home. Until He calls us home. Teachable moments. I've had a couple this week that are pretty powerful for me. Hope you'll have some maybe this afternoon, this week. Send me an email, share them with me, share them with other folks, and let's grow together. Now, if you would, turn in your Bibles to Judges chapter 11. Judges chapter 11. Don't be sitting there thinking, all right, he hadn't even gotten into the sermon yet. This is going to be long. No, it's not. No, it's not. Sunday after I get back from Ukraine, I make no promises, but today we're quick. We're quick. Judges 11, because part B is tonight, which gives me a little latitude there. Judges 11, Jephthah, interesting fella, makes a great vow, pays a high price, lots of 2014s for us here. Be looking for them. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor. If we stopped here, it'd be a wonderful story, but it goes on. But he was a son of a harlot, and Gilead begot Jephthah. Now Gilead, we know he's a good fella, but he also did some rotten things. Unfaithful to his wife, unfaithful to his God, steps out and has this boy named Jephthah. Gilead's wife bore sons, not counting Jephthah, of course. When his wife's sons grew up, notice what happened to poor little Jephthah. They drove Jephthah out and said to him, you shall have no inheritance in our father's house, for you are not the son, for you are the son of another woman. You're not our mama's son. Verse 3. Then Jephthah runs off. He fled from his brothers. What kind of family is that? Talk about dysfunctional family. Can you find a functional family anywhere in the Bible? It's challenging, isn't it? We're all flawed on some level, always have been. He runs from his brothers and dwelt in the land of Tob. Notice this, and worthless men banded together with Jephthah and went out raiding with him. Kind of a rough man maybe, rough life, running with a rough crowd. Verse 4, and it came to pass after time that the people of Ammon made war against Israel. Anytime you read in your Bible about Ammon, you're reading about a rotten place and rotten folks. Ruthless people. So they're fighting against the children of God, Israel. Verse 5, and so it was when the people of Ammon made war against Israel, and the elders of Gilead, notice, they went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. The same one they'd run off. They want him back now. Then they said to Jephthah, come and be our commander, that we may fight against the people of Ammon. So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, did you not hate me and expel me from my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress? Hopefully God could never say the same to us. Why do you come to me now when you're in distress? Where were you the other day? Verse 8, and the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, this is why we have turned again to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the people of Ammon and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Look at verse 29, please. Between verse 8 and 29, Jephthah accepts the job, agrees to step up and lead the people of God, with the condition that if he is successful, he does become their leader. He does become their captain forever. Verse 29. Then the Spirit of the Lord, that's a very important phrase, then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he advanced toward the people of Ammon. There's going to be a fight. What does Jephthah do? Verse 30. It's what he's famous for. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will deliver indeed the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that, notice this word, whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Now skip over to verse 34. Between 31 and 34, the victory has been won. Now we should be having a very happy homecoming, but we don't. You've seen the videos. These soldiers coming home from these dangerous places. They're meeting and greeting, sometimes surprising their wife, their children, some cases even their pets. Can't see those without crying. They're so joyful. Didn't happen in this case. Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah. There was his daughter. No, not his daughter. His daughter. Coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing. And she was not just his daughter, she was his only child. Beside her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her, there are no smiles here, that he tore his clothes and said, alas, my daughter, you've brought me very low! Exclamation point. You are among those who trouble me! Exclamation point. For I have given my word to the Lord, and notice this, I cannot go back on it. Made a vow and I'm going to keep it, no matter the price. Verse 36, notice her remarkable attitude. Really amazing. So she said to him, my father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, because the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the people of Ammon. Big vow. Big promise. He's going to keep it, the promise he made. And keeping this vow, keeping this promise, is going to cost. He'll pull out every star in his sky. Every flower in his garden is going to come up. These are words, this promise, it is soaked in tears. These are not cheap words. These are not easy words. These are words that are going to hurt, going to sting forever. It is rather remarkable that a man with the upbringing that he had would have such conviction to say that I have given my word, I have made my promise, and I cannot go back on that. I will do what I have told God I would do. Consider for a moment who is saying these words. Consider that this is a man who missed out on a lot in life. First of all, he missed out on having a good father. He did not have a father who would step up and say, "This is my son, I'm giving him my name, and you get off his back, you leave him alone." No more bullying. He'll sit at our table, he'll eat our food, he'll live in our house, he'll be treated as my own because he is my own. He didn't have that kind of father. He missed out. He had a father that was a very poor example, a very poor support to his boy. Not only did he miss out on having a good father, missed out on having a good mother. His mother sold herself for money to men. The first eyes he ever looked into as a baby belonged to an unclean woman. The first meal he received came from an unclean woman. The first lips that touched his forehead were from an unclean woman. Missed out on a good daddy. Missed out on a good mama. Missed out on having good friends. He was called ugly names before he was old enough to understand what these ugly names even meant. He was run off by the people that should have been embracing him. How many times as a child was he on the outside looking in while the other children were laughing and playing games and eating at Daddy's table? How many times? I mean, people haven't changed that much, right? How many times did he cry himself to sleep like you and I would have done had we been in a similar circumstance? Didn't have a good daddy, didn't have a good mama, didn't have a family that would accept him, didn't have good friends. Missed out on the family inheritance. Didn't get a nickel from these folks. Run off to a place called Tob, where there are even more wicked people. Surprisingly, rather ironically, it seems like the more wicked people were more loving to him than his own family. What a shame. So we're thinking about a fella today in Jephthah who didn't have much of a chance at life. Didn't have a whole lot of material with to construct a good life. You know, it's kind of easy to fail when you're surrounded by people who expect you to fail. When you've got nobody that'll step up and say, "I believe in you." I hope everybody here knows that you got somebody, a lot of somebodies that believe in you. You children, you got to know Mom and Dad believe in me. Grandma, Grandpa believe in you. This preacher believes in you. These elders, these Bible class teachers, this church believes in you. God believes. You know, we got that right. Believe in yourself. Jephthah, he never heard a sermon. He never heard anybody stand up and say what you have just heard. And so he's run off, forgotten about for a while until his hometown folks are in trouble and they remember him. He's a good fighter. He's a good leader. He's proven himself over there in the land of Tob. Let's go get him. And it's remarkable to me that he says yes to their request. Think about the treatment he had received at their hands, and now they're saying, "We want you to be..." I'm the run of the family, he's thinking. At least that's the way you treated me. I was an outcast. You treated the family dog better than you. And now you want me to be you want me to come home. You want me to be the boss. You want me to step out and risk my life fighting for you folks? Are you crazy? I think if that had been me in that situation, I'd have said, no. You need me now? I needed you when I was 5, when I was 6, when I was 10. Where were you then? Leave. Don't ever get near me. Have you had that kind of conversation with somebody where you've been so hurt that you just leave me alone, stay away, go? That's natural. I think that's very human. Okay? But it's not healthy for us, is it? I'm so thankful for Jephthah, aren't you? I'm so thankful for his attitude here, because he does not allow their bitter, harsh treatment to make him bitter and harsh. That to me is remarkable, especially when you consider, again, the stuff with which his life was made. bad mom, bad dad, bad friends, bad family, no inheritance, runs with tough crowd in the city of Tob, in that area. And yet he has a heart that can be forgiving. He has a heart that can be, our word of the day, restored in a sense. All right, let's go back to high school, to college. Y'all remember, and some of you are on your way to these high schools and colleges one day. You remember reading Dickens' book, Great Expectation. You remember studying that? And you remember this lady, Miss Haversham? You got to be thinking, if you're not into literature, oh, this is going to be boring. It's really not so exciting. Miss Haversham, she's ready to get married, right? The dress is ready, the cake's ready, the folks are starting to show up. It's going to be the best day of her life, right? She's beautiful, waiting the arrival of the groom. At 20 till 9, she gets a message from the groom. I'm not coming. 20 to 9. Her heart keeps beating, but her life ends at 20 to 9. Actually, all the clocks in her house are halted at 20 to 9 and never restarted. The wedding cake rots. The window blinds are closed. She wears that old wedding dress for the rest of her life, walks around wearing just one shoe. Her life basically ended because of one, and yes, it was a significant disappointment. How sad. How sad that every day she got up with an opportunity for a fresh start, restored, renewal, forgiveness, and it's always going to be 20 to 9 in her heart because of her choice to forever be bitter. And if you read that book, she gets really bitter as time goes on. I say as time goes on, time didn't go on for her, did it? 20 to 9. Clock was stuck. Heart was stuck. And for many, many Christians and many, many people in this world, it may be 20 to 9, right? Where we've been hurt. We've been disappointed. Somebody offended us. That happens. I can tell you. Especially if you're looking for it, you'll be offended before you leave today. If you're looking for it, there'll be somebody walk past you. They don't speak. They don't speak. They won't even see. They act like you're not alive. That'll happen. You got 400 people, it's going to happen. Tomorrow at work, somebody's going to be unkind. Somebody in traffic is going to cut me off. I may cut somebody off. I might be the person that walks past without speaking. You may be that person, right? Things happen. We don't get invited to a party. Or we do get invited to a party, then that's wrong too. You know, we are around fragile people, and we are fragile people, more fragile probably than we would admit. And sometimes things happen, and sometimes the devil uses our own weaknesses and our own harshness and insensitivities to be a wrecking crew on other. It happens. It happens. Folks, if Jephthah could get over what he got over, surely Jeff can get over, and you can get over the injustices that have come our way. I had a pretty good dad. I had a great mom. I had a family that didn't kick me out. I received the family inheritance. I received great blessings. I had people that believed in me. And I'm guessing most everybody here could sign your name to what I've just said. Maybe you say, oh, well, no, I'm the Jephthah in the crowd. Okay. Then respond as Jephthah did. Get that clock spinning again. Don't be a Miss Haversham. It's not 20 to 9. We can be forgiven. We can be forgiving. And we can be restored. You can leave I got a choice, right? You can leave as a 1980 Monza or a 57 Chevy that's been restored and looks fantastic, runs like a top. We can do that if we'll choose wisely. It is all about the mind. Again, kind of where we started. We can't control what other folks say. We can't control what. Could Jephthah control that crowd? No. He could control his response to it. I get cancer. I can't control that maybe. I get a stroke. I can't control that. The phone rings and it's really bad news. Somebody betrays me. Somebody starts a rumor about. Somebody does it about you. We can't control that. We can control our response, our reaction. And with God's help, we can choose to think, as Paul said In Philippians 4:8, we can choose to think about what's true, what's good, what's noble, what's praiseworthy, what's virtuous. And that's what we must do. The clock is spinning. Time is racing forward. How will we live our lives? In misery? Stuck in the past? Or reaching forward for what's good? Remember Jeremiah 29:11? God has a plan for us, right? To prosper us, to bless us. He's not talking about putting extra dollars in our wallet. He's talking about putting special eternal treasures in our heart. And you're a treasure to me. And you're a treasure to these people on the pews around you. Live that way. Live that way. Enjoy the freshness. Enjoy the new start we can have as the children of God. Tonight when you come back, we'll continue our study because it's really going to get challenging for Jephthah as his little girl comes out. And he's going to keep that promise. And we're going to look and maybe even ask for a show of hands at the end of the sermon tonight. And here will be the question. Do you believe he burned to death his daughter? Raise your hand. Not now, but tonight. After we look at some of the evidence, we'll consider that. We had a speaker a couple summers ago on a Wednesday night. He was convinced that Jephthah offered his only daughter as a burnt offering. We'll look at that. We'll think about that. But the most important detail we'll notice tonight is he kept his word. He kept his vow. He kept his promise. You and I, we've made promises to God. Bad storm, God, you get me out of this storm. Financial storm, emotional storm, physical storm, health storm, relationship storm. If you get me out of it, I'm going to do this, this, this. When we got married, we made certain promises. When we were carrying these babies in our tummies, Mama, we made certain promises. When our child was sick, when our child was in trouble, we made certain promises. God, if you'll get them well, I'll do this, this, and this. I'll end with this. My daddy, he was a good fellow with flaws, as you know, but he was sitting with an elderly fellow in church that had gone to church with us at Cottage Hill. And this fella, I said gone to church with us. He really hadn't gone to church. He was one of those in the directory type members. His name was there, okay? He was a good guy, but he had made a decision. I'm just not going to be real spiritual all the time. I'm not going to worship. I got other things to do. And so he gets real sick, and men of the church need to go sit with him in the hospital. And one night, my dad's sitting with him, and he's praying with him and having a good talk. And this guy says, when I get out of the hospital, I promise, I'm going to be on the front row. I'm going to be there every Sunday. I'm going to make everything right with God and His church. He gets out of the hospital. Next Sunday, he's not there. He's not there. He made a promise. He didn't keep it. It was a good promise. It needed to be kept. Thankfully, the story has a happy ending. Eventually, he kept the promise. He was restored. Maybe not on the front row, but he came back. He's now in eternity, and I'm confident in a much better place. When we make good promises and we keep them, we're going to be blessed. Are there promises that you've made, that I've made, that we have yet to keep, or that we need to get back to, we need to revisit? Let's think about that now. We're about to stand and sing a song of invitation. The day we were baptized, we made a promise, right? We're going to be faithful. We're going to be spiritual. We're going to be generous. We're going to be forgiving. We're going to be evangelistic. We're going to be a student of the Word. We're going to be prayerful. We're going to be the best thing in our neighborhood. We're going to be the salt of the earth, the light of the world. That's a great promise. Let's be sure we've kept that. If we can help you in any way now, pray with you for you, help you come back to those vows, then I hope you'll come forward and ask for prayers, ask for our encouragement. We're not gossip about you. We just love you, hug you, and pray with you. That's what we'll do because we're all flawed. We're all in need of some restoration. Okay? And then if you have yet to make that vow, make that commitment to put on Jesus in baptism, remission of sins, in obedience to Acts 2:38, obedience to John 3, verse 3, verse 5, verse 7, being born again of water and the Spirit, do that now, please, while together we stand and sing. Would you be free?